Hey everybody, happy Monday. It's Meredith Miller and welcome to my Sana Q&A Mondays. The link is below the video in the description if you'd like to leave a question for an upcoming Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and read this one. It says, I love your YouTube channel. I really find a true connection. I'm always replaying your videos. Thank you for all the work that you do. Today, while I was walking, a man driving a car stopped for me at the crosswalk. He looked at me, and so I started to cross, and just as I was about to step in front of his car, he drove off, almost hitting me. In my head, I thought about hitting his window with my hand, but I stopped myself. Just because it was so quick, no time to think, just react. For some odd reason, I didn't want to be too mean and hit his car. How can an empath care less about the feelings of others? Thanks again, Meredith. So, first of all, good job not touching his property, in containing that impulse, right, to be a dick in return. The guy was a dick, right? And so the impulsive reaction is to do the same thing back, right? So good job not doing that. The time saved you too. It all happened very quickly. That was helpful. Something that I would recommend when you're in these situations, random rudeness like this from other people, is catch yourself before that impulsive reaction, right? And then separate yourself from that and observe it. Be the witness of the experience and ask yourself, how would my higher self respond to this? Not the impulsive version of me, but how would my higher self respond to this? How can I contribute to growth in this situation, either for myself and or for myself and this person? Take the high road. Don't react, because otherwise you're just going to get caught in that loop, and then you're going to carry that karma with you, that you hit his property, or maybe you damaged something, or just the fact that you let him get to you and you got caught in the meanness of that sort of thing. The high road is sort of laugh at it, right? Laugh at the fact that there are people who think that they are special and so important in this world, right? And superior to the rest of us. And so they treat people that way, whether they're trying to get a positive or a negative reaction. Either kind of those emotional responses is supply for them. Because even if you're angry and you get upset and you respond like that, the message you're telling them, it's you're feeding them. You're telling them, you're important. You matter. I'm this upset because you matter. That's how twisted their mentality is. They actually think that they matter if you get upset at something they do. That's why you don't want to react like that. It just gives them pleasure. You not reacting is just kind of deactivating of that whole situation. So just recognize that it doesn't really matter, that how people treat you says a lot more about who they are than who you are. It's not personal. Read, The Four Agreements, right? By Don Miguel Ruiz. He talks about it's not personal. People are treating other people like that. It's much more about who they are, the shit that they're dealing with, the shit that they're not dealing with, and why they treat you that way. And it really has nothing to do with you. When you can recognize that, then you don't have to take it personally. You can recognize he probably did that every single stop walk that he passed by, and then he probably went into work and treated his secretary like garbage and talked to his partner like garbage, and then got on the phone and yelled at his wife and didn't care about his kids. I don't know. Maybe his whole day is like that. We don't know. Maybe he just had a really bad morning and a big fight with his wife. And maybe his wife is a total bitch and he's just so pissed off. And maybe you're just you looked like her, and it just triggered him, reminded him of you. Again, it's not an excuse, right? Because he's an adult and he needs his own responsibility for his actions. But what I'm saying is it's not personal. It's about something else in his life. It had nothing to do with you. And in the first reaction that an empath has, and an empath is everybody who has a conscience, right? Anybody who has a conscience is capable of empathy. If you don't have a conscience, you're not capable of empathy, right? So an empath is really a normal human being, a person who has a conscience and has empathy. And the first reaction of someone who has empathy is, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do wrong? It's all my fault. I caused that. And why is he so upset? What did I do, right? And so you take it personally. So practice not taking it personally and recognize that he came to that experience with whatever baggage he was coming with. And it didn't matter if it was you or somebody else, something would have reminded him, or he was just in a bad enough mood anyways, right? That's what he was going to do. So if you are going to say something to someone, now that situation happened very quickly, but let's say the situation was slowed down, or you were in the line at the grocery store and like you're going to be spending the next 5 minutes next to each other and sharing the space or something, right? Or some work situation, like it's inescapable and you're there, right? So what I would recommend, something one of my coaches taught me, is say something that encourages growth. Say something that encourages growth for you and growth for that other person. It's like you're offering them the opportunity to grow rather than feeding into this loop, you know, of the abuse and that sort of stuff. And then, you know, you throwing dirt and then they throwing dirt and you're throwing dirt and all that. So, you know, something like somebody says something really rude or does something really rude, you know, just kind of take this like childlike, that's interesting, you know, wonder about the experience. And maybe the person's like, what's so interesting? And maybe you just say something like, you know, it's just interesting that rudeness is generally a sign that people feel a sense of powerlessness and lack of control over their lives. And I was just wondering why you might be feeling that way. And it just really turns the table back to that person, and they kind of go, whoa, right? Because somebody just held them accountable for their actions, for their behavior. And they're probably going, damn, yeah, right? Now, a narcissist, of course, you know, a person on the cluster B spectrum is probably not going to be examining their own behavior too much. A normal person would, an empathic person would. Maybe they're just being rude and they had a bad day or whatever was going on. You say this and they're like, oh my God, you're right. You know, it's like, I feel totally out of control about my marriage, and I think my wife's gonna leave me, or my husband's gonna leave me, or my kid who's just like doing really bad in life and I don't know how to reach him. You know, maybe it's like something like this, and like, and you by saying that, making that observation, like it sort of just, it unwinds that for this person. It disarms, you know, this defense mechanism. Rudeness is a defense mechanism. It's something people do when they feel powerlessness, you know, and so it gives them that sense of power over another person, to treat them bad and to see that they were able to make that person feel bad, right? But if you're dealing with a person on the cluster B spectrum, probably not going to be too self-reflective. You know, they might try to turn it back on you, but for a second, they're probably going to go, just because they're not used to people calling them out for their stuff. And sometimes you can actually reach them. They might have a moment of clarity when you call them out for something like that, and like this moment of lucidity too, right? Where they're like momentarily aware. You know, maybe they even apologize. Maybe they even stop doing it. You know, maybe if this is like a pattern that they keep doing and then you call them out, and they're probably going to stop doing it because they know that if they do that and they treat you that way, then your response is going to be to call them out for feeling powerlessness. And they sure don't want to feel powerlessness. They sure don't want other people to think that they're powerless over their lives, because they're trying to maintain this image of being very powerful and in control. So they're probably not going to treat you like that again, you know. And so that's what I wrote. Now, again, in this situation that you were in, that happened very fast. Nothing really, you know, the closure in that situation happens inside yourself. You know, and that's you having that imaginary dialogue with that guy in the car, like, you know, just like I was telling you, something like that, like, that's interesting, you know, that you did that. I wonder why. And just kind of creating this sort of scenario in your mind versus putting all the energy into, what a jerk, I can't believe, right? Because that's just negative. And all that does is then attract more negativity to you. Like, so what you might notice, like maybe even that morning, after that happened and all that anger inside that you didn't discharge and you didn't really resolve, and then maybe like a bunch of other little things happened that really pissed you off, or a bunch of other little unfortunate things happened, or people were rude to you, or something got messed up, right? Why? Because that, it's like you become a mass of that kind of negative energy, and then it attracts to you more of the same, right? So you want to create a different sort of thing, which is, I wonder why. And then it's sort of like, it goes back out, the energy where it came from, it goes back out there. You're not owning it. You're not taking it personally. You're not reacting to it, and therefore owning the karma and responsibility of throwing more dirt and continuing to perpetuate the cycle, right? And, so in those situations too, to care less, right? To overcome that empathy that you have, those feelings that you have, like to care less is like breathe. Just breathe. That's always going to calm your emotional state. When you remember to breathe, one of my teachers in Peru always said you can always breathe 3 times before you react to anything, before you respond to life in general. Breathe. Remember to breathe. That brings you back to the present moment, and it brings you back to a state of presence. Like you are present in the here and now. And when you are present in the here and now, you have access to your energy. You have access to your power. When you're not present in the here and now, you're powerlessness. You're scattered. Your energy is all over the place, right? You're not here, present. That breath brings you back to presence. The breath brings you back to your body. It calms down your reaction and it stops you from feeding that negative feedback cycle. So, recognize that if you identify as an empath, you are a normal human being. Normal human beings should have empathy because normal human beings should have a conscience. A conscience is what makes us human, right? A lack of conscience is like a person has lost their humanity. And you don't want to get caught in that cycle. You don't want to just keep perpetuating that because you do have a conscience. So it is going to eat at you. It's going to gnaw at you when you do something wrong, something that bothers you, something that like hitting someone's car or damaging someone's property or saying something really awful. You're going to regret that later. They might not. That person might not have any empathy or any sense of conscience. That situation might have meant nothing to them, but to you it weighs on you, and then you end up carrying the burden of that guilt that you then have to work out. So rather than owning that, deflect it like Tai Chi, right? Something that you say, something that you do that deflects it, doesn't take it personally, recognizes it's not personal, and deals with the situation as your higher self would deal with the situation, rather than getting involved in the impetuousness of the emotional reaction and feeding it. Right? So take the higher road. I'm sending you a big hug.